Welcome back to the X Podcast. I have Tim, the Cowboy Moore, here in front of me.
The Wrangler.
The Wrangler.
Call me the Wrangler.
Be the Wrangler. You just got back from the Promised Land, the Heartland.
The Cowboy Preacher.
Were you in Dallas? Where'd you just get back from?
Dallas area.
Okay.
Dallas.
Wait, why are you traveling so often?
I feel like we have
such a jet setter.
I feel like, let's see here. I've been to California twice. I've been to Texas.
California twice in the last year?
Yeah. I went twice in 2 months.
That's right. Yeah, we were in LA in, was it March? February?
March, and then went again in May, and now I just went to Texas.
So that's right. You have.
Yeah. And then I think we're going to Florida in August. May have some other trip if we end up doing a work one.
Florida? So, I'm so sorry. Why?
I know. Trust me. It wasn't. Yes. I don't have anything to say.
Okay. All right. What part of Florida? You love Jacksonville. You spent a lot of time around Jacksonville?
No.
Okay.
This will be near Orlando. Actually, we're going to spend a weekend
visiting
our
Disney?
friends. No, we're not actually.
Okay.
Well, no, we're not supposed
to
be going to
Disney.
Orlando? I know there's a conference, and so we might be going for a conference for a few days, and then we're going to try to around that go visit some friends down in where are they? Bradenton now. They moved down there, so we'll go down and visit them, and then we'll drive. It's not but 2 hours drive. So,
gotcha.
But it's going to be a hot time of the year in August.
Yeah, how hot was it in?
Oh, it was hot.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm not going to lie. It was warm. It was 94, 95, and wringing wet, humid.
Oh, I've been to Dallas a lot in summers, and I mean, I'll get close to 100, if not over.
Yeah. We got, I guess this wasn't the hottest time, and so I officiated a wedding that was outside at 5 p.m., which is the hottest time of the day.
Why would they do that?
I don't know. It's when they wanted to have their wedding and the reception, so. Luckily for me, this was beautiful. So it was in front of this big oak tree, and they set up all the chairs. I feel bad for everybody attending it was sitting in the sun, but the bridal party was on this path. That part of it was done kind of under the shade of the tree. So I was in the shade at least. Wearing a suit, but I was in the shade. It was 95 degrees and humid.
And a cowboy hat.
I did not wear a cowboy hat for the wedding.
I tried on some cowboy hats and boots.
I did try on some cowboy hats. When in Texas.
You look just like George Strait.
Okay.
With that cowboy hat on.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah, I tried on an $1,800 cowboy hat just for fun. That was not to buy. It was pretty cool. You could tell the difference.
Stetson?
No.
What was it?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't think it was Stetson. Is that even a real brand? Hat brand?
Yes.
That's just for clone? Clone for Texans?
No, trust me.
Stetson.
There are, like the store you showed me with the cowboy boots and hats, they have those in South Carolina.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. I mean, probably not as many as Texas. Yeah. Texas, I mean, you've been there before, but it seems like you really experienced the reality of Texas as its own country.
Yes.
It is its own place.
Its own culture.
Yes.
It definitely felt like we were in a different culture. Just by the way everybody dressed and the things that we went and did. It was a lot of fun. Went to my first rodeo.
How was that?
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Sounds like you were traumatized a little bit.
I wasn't. Some of our group was a little traumatized by the calf roping.
Yeah, it sounds like they thought it would be a petting zoo.
I don't know that most of us city slickers knew what to think, other than we were going to a rodeo. I was really impressed though, because it was a cool experience.
Watch more Yellowstone.
Yeah. No, this was it was kind of like brutal at certain points, but it was a very enjoyable experience. It was awesome, and it was more of an experience than I thought it would be. I thought kind of an outdoor, we're just going to go sit and watch things happening, bull riding and different things, but it was like an event. You showed up and music and Star Spangled Banner and God Bless Texas, and I think there was some song or quote and somebody riding around a horse with an American flag while everybody was cheering. I mean, it was the quintessential Texas experience.
Do you like Texas?
Yes. I mean, look, I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
I don't want to live there. It was hot. It's flat.
Did you actually spend any time in the city of Dallas?
We did not. Well, on this trip. I have been.
The city of Dallas is cool.
The city of Dallas is nice. I've been there. Everything is so spread out. It's just massive. Like, it's weird. We didn't sit in tons of traffic like I did in LA, but anything you want to get to, every place we wanted to go was like, oh, that's 45 minutes away. Like, you could go 45 minutes in any direction. You're still technically in Dallas somehow. And so it's huge. It was massive. It was nice. It was, I mean,
What part of Dallas were you in?
Fort Worth, but really
yep.
further. We even went further south where the wedding was.
Close to like Grapevine?
No, Grapevine I think was No, I've been to Grapevine because I've been to Fellowship Church there. It wasn't close to that. We did drive through downtown Fort Worth. That's where we went to Stockyards and we went to the shopping. And that was cool. Cool experience. Fort
Worth is cool.
We went to a cool restaurant. It was recommended, Joe T. Garcia's. It was a real popular, like, themed restaurant. It was really neat inside of it. I will say, one of my favorite things, our friends, the Castles, Trey's on staff here. He's been on a podcast with us recently on AI, but they're from that area. So we were kind of going to their hometown. So they're telling us about, you got to go here, you got to go here. And one of the things we always talk about is donuts. And they're like, man, we found out there's even here good donuts. They're like, I'm telling you, they don't compare to Texas. We're like, oh, come on, I don't believe you. They're like, I'm telling you. And so we go down there and they tell us, look, you just want to find a donut shop. It'll look like a hole in the wall and it'll just say on the sign, donuts. That's it. No name of anything. It'll just say donuts on it. So the first day we're down there, we're like, oh, we're going to do breakfast. And we're like, hey, we got to go find donuts. They say it. You go pull it up and you drive one block and there it is. And so we go in the first donut place and they were amazing. I'm not going to lie. They were better than donuts I've had here. And then day two, we did donuts every day. I'm not going to lie. And then day two, I'm texting Trey and he's like, you got to go to Shipley Donuts. Even though
Shipley's is good.
Dude, they
Shipley
were
Donuts are good.
So we went to Shipley and they were even better.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more of a chain, but had the same feel. They were awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was the funniest thing. There is like a donut shop every block. I don't understand it.
Yep.
Like, why do they have so many donut shops? I wasn't hating. I loved it. So we got to, we had barbecue. We had all the
barbecue.
Stuff. We went to a couple places that had barbecue. I'm trying to think where. There was one place that we ate that had barbecue. We didn't go. He told us of a barbecue joint. We didn't go to that. It was called Dave's Barbecue. We didn't get time to go to it. But I forget where it was. It was some local place that had. Oh, the first night we were there, they had catered it in somewhere. They had different barbecue and pulled pork and some other things catered in.
All right, next time you go back, here, anybody listening. Now, obviously, the Castles, they're from there. They know.
Yeah, they'll tell you.
But I got friends that are basically family that I would visit every year. And I'm telling you, Babe's is this iconic place with the best home cooking you've ever had in your life. It has one of those wooden wheels that turns as you have dinner together. It's family style, incredible. Best pies of your life, go to Emporium Pies. And the best pizza. You know me, I'm weird.
I love pizza.
I should have told you this.
You should have.
And listen,
what's this near Dallas? Though we weren't that close.
Okay, this is this may have been closer to Dallas, but when you go back, it's worth it. So I'm a love pizza.
Me too.
And I mean, me and you've both been fortunate enough. I've had pizza from Rome. I've had pizza in Italy.
Yep, me too.
All these places. But the best pizza of my life, they told me this one of the times I went out to Dallas. Like Chad Veach, they had just had him in, travels all over the world. They literally said he agreed this is the best pizza he's ever had.
If I'd known that, we would have probably tried to make it happen.
It's called Greenville Avenue Pizza Company. And literally they told me, they said, don't get anything on it. Just get plain cheese pizza. And they have this sauce that you put on. It's like a seasoning called pizza crack.
I love cheese pizza though.
But you can get whatever.
You can get pepperoni?
Yes.
Can I get that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna put this on here, Texas, because there's a chance I might be going down again.
You need to go. I'll send you some Rex too.
Dining, because they also told us about Brahms is an ice cream place.
Okay.
We didn't get a chance to go there. But I want to. Okay, I'm gonna write this down because I'm gonna save this for next year. What's it called? Pizza must do.
Greenville Avenue Pizza.
Greenville. Is this downtown or where is it?
It's downtown.
Okay.
Yep. And then Emporium Pies. HG Supply has the coolest restaurant rooftop vibe in Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah, Dallas has some spots.
No, we didn't get the chance to go downtown Dallas, and I would have liked to have. Again, I've been there before. You see the spot where JFK was assassinated and all that good stuff.
Velvet Taco for tacos. Yeah. Oh, did you go there?
No, I did in recent trips. Yeah. This time we just didn't have time. We never even went downtown Dallas. And so if we go back, I'd like to take the group and say, hey, let's go to downtown Dallas and we'll go have pizza there. So anyways, it was
Plano. Laura Lee would love Plano.
Plano, Texas? Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So anyways, this has just been self-indulgent. You just got back last night. Right? Was it last night?
When did I get back?
I think you got back last night.
It was last night.
Yeah.
Right. We did. We got back yesterday. So
Awesome, but overall, great trip. Anything else funny or noteworthy?
No, I mean, we had a great time with some family, friends. We had the one thing I was telling you, I was officiating the wedding, and so they asked me to bless the food. And so, at the wedding reception, and so I kept thinking to myself, I was like, all right, they want me to bless the food. How do I make this? How do I endear myself even more to these Texans, right? And it was a fascinating wedding because a lot of them were transplants. So there were like people from 9 different states there. But the groom, his whole family was from Texas, from there. So
God bless it.
Yeah, and so in the end of my prayer, and you should have heard the place erupt. I was praying. I said, so God, would pray that you'd bless this couple, God, would you bless this food as we eat it? And then I ended with, and God bless Texas.
Yeah, you did.
Amen. And woo! And I did this, and dude, the place erupted. I mean, people were coming up to me. That was the best prayer, my son. I mean, it was just, I knew they loved it. They loved it.
Yeah, so. I mean, this would be the age-old question for a Texan. Do they love Texas more or America more? I mean, what would they say?
They would say Texas is America.
Texas, that's great. Texas is America. But you know what? You were just being Paul. All things to all people.
Yeah, it was good. We had a great trip. We enjoyed ourselves a lot there. It's just, I feel like it's not that I wouldn't mind necessarily living there. I think that what I didn't necessarily connect with was the temperature, the heat. And I've heard that our friends, Gassels, they've told us the same. They're like, people don't realize it gets really, really hot and humid in the summer. So I although better in the winter than we have here, but it's worse in the summer. And I enjoy the summers here probably a little bit better than that. So that, and I, maybe just because I'm not been around it, don't necessarily see myself so much connecting with the Texas culture of because seriously, we go to the stockyards and everybody, I mean, that is just what you wear. Yeah. And I felt a little bit out of place with my baggy jeans. I didn't even bring my Jordans because there'd been no point.
Yeah.
I mean, so I just feel like it's just,
it's an interesting culture.
Some of it is just, I think the culture you grow up in, that becomes common. Yeah. That's normal.
And it's not just Texas culture is not just Southern culture because it's different from Southern culture.
Oh, no.
I had friends that I worked with in Georgia that moved to Texas. So if you're not from the South, you may think, okay, well, those two, but it's very different.
It's Western. So the way I describe it, we had one family with us that are from Kentucky. Well, they're not from. They moved. They live in Kentucky. So they're kind of transplant cowboys. I talk about, you think a little bit about cowboys and stuff. And one guy, my buddy, he was dressed for the wedding, and I said, "You look like you're dressed. You look like Derby cowboy, like Kentucky Derby cowboy. You know what I mean? You look like Kentucky cowboy." Down there in Texas, they look more Western cowboy. It's got more of a Western look.
Yeah.
And I there's part of it that's just like here I would never wear a cowboy hat, but down there, all the people with cowboy hats, I mean, they're kind of cool. Like you just you see, like there were some of the family were sitting there at the wedding. One guy's got a jacket, one guy's got a vest, kind of a dude with a cowboy hat, and they're just sitting there like this, during the reception in one part, and you're just like, you are so John Dutton.
Yeah.
You just I think they're judging me right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they were nicest
Who
people
is
ever.
Salt
They weren't.
City boy.
But there's just something about that look, the silhouette of the cowboy. And it was it's endearing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I just don't know if I see myself as a cowboy.
By the way, I don't know if you've seen the new trailer
riding.
For Kevin Costner's new movie. That's coming out.
No,
because he left Yellowstone, John Dutton.
Yeah. You're right. I did see it,
and the trailer looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's not just that, but there's even just culturally, even just socially, and the people there. I remember it was very interesting. My former pastor, he was part of Dallas 5 years and really thrived out there. But I remember the first year me asking, what have you noticed? And he said it's very interesting because we've talked about it. Midwest culture is even very different than Southern culture, where I'm from.
Yep.
But even from Southern culture to Western country culture, he described it as most of the people you meet are really, really nice. But unlike the Southeast, he said he felt like everybody had a fence that was really tall that takes a long time to jump over and get past the surface, which is really interesting. And not in a negative way. He just felt like there is it was
more guarded.
More. It's almost like this very friendly.
Yeah.
For the most part. Very friendly, kind, but an invisible fence that is a lot harder to climb over and get past the surface to. It's just very interesting. It's different, the regional
The people I met that were the family of the groom, because I only met the groom through the family friends recently, a year ago, 2 years ago, and I've not gotten to know him, but the family, they were all really nice people.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't spend enough time with
Yeah.
them to really see, you know what I mean? They could be very cordial,
Yeah.
very social, very, very nice, very sweet people.
Yeah.
Very kind. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a good trip. We had a
Yeah.
great time. We really did, with family, friends.
Texas is a fun place to visit.
Yeah, so we did. It's just, it was hot. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's so
I
hot.
mean, it was 9:00 in the morning, ringing wet.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
good trip.
glad you're back. Glad it was fun. We had week 2 of a brand new series that we're doing called Word to the Wise. And every summer we take a small little book of the Bible to do a 4 to 5 week series on.
Mm-hmm.
I believe last year is 1 Peter.
Yeah.
And this year it's the book of James, which is, a lot of people call it the New Testament equivalent of the book of Proverbs. A lot about wisdom, a lot about the tongue. You kicked off week 1. Jessica Castles brought week 2. And every chapter goes into different things, but overall general theme running through it is wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I feel like I've heard a lot on wisdom, like leading up to and even during this series. Like I'll, from time to time, just listen to other random podcasts or messages. And I feel like so many of them have been around this concept of wisdom. And the cool thing is, with this series, we've put a lot of resource behind it.
Yeah.
On the app, there's the sermon notes to go back and listen to. There's an entire other podcast. We should give a shout out.
Yeah.
There is a discipleship podcast attached to those for those that would be interested or part of our faith community. On the book of James, I believe it's Addie, Jessica Castles, and Pastor Zach Brown doing that. And so they put out the intro in week 1. It's great. But anyways, it got us thinking about this whole idea of wisdom. I feel like it's an ethereal concept.
Yeah.
That's important to make practical, but can often be misunderstood. And there's so many nuances to it. So, yeah. First off, why are you excited about this series? And second off, what have you been chewing on in this whole idea of wisdom?
I think it's going to be a very practical series. I think it could be very helpful. I think one of the things that really leads to a fulfilling life is wisdom. I think it's an underrated thing.
Yeah.
Right? I think wisdom is underrated. Most of the time it feels like wisdom is what you learn with age and experience. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But it does. I mean, you're you turned 40 this year, right?
Well, we don't have to talk about it.
You don't have to talk about it. But as you are finally growing up
Yeah.
and getting mature like an adult,
Yeah.
I imagine there are things that you would say to the 20 version of Russ that you'd be like, don't do that.
Oh.
You should spend more time doing this. Right? I mean, it's a part of life's experience. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
And I mean, to me, that was part of like going to college. And when you go to college, you finish high school and you feel like, wow, I accomplished something. I'm pretty smart. And then you go to another level and then you realize right away what you don't know. And I think wisdom is knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
So
But sorry, not to interrupt you, but you know what sucks is because I heard somebody talking about what would you tell your younger self, and they're like, it wouldn't matter because my younger self wouldn't listen.
I wasn't that wise, right?
Like I think that's the deepest lack of wisdom when you're young is that you don't think you need wisdom.
I know. It's so true. It really is true. Or you think I know better than this older person.
Yeah.
Because they're a little bit older. You're out of date. You don't know what it's like today. That was in your day. And my day, it's different. Culture's different. Things are different. And sure, technology and other things sometimes create gaps where, the older a generation gets and the new technology forms. It's not in their childhood. It's not in their lifetime of their 20s, 30s, 40s, that they can be a little bit disconnected, I think, when it comes from technology. But I think that technology only makes life better or more complicated.
Yes.
It's supposed to simplify
It just
things,
makes it more efficient.
Makes it more efficient. When you peel back kind of the layers of what life is and you remove technology that makes life more efficient, we have technology today that helps you communicate, and yet I would say my experience with, I want to say the younger generation is that many of them are actually worse at communicating at a younger age. Communicating in a certain way. That they can text really fast. They you know what I mean? They can do all that. But when you ask someone who's like 19 years old sometimes to, hey, here, why don't you call and order a pizza? It's like, I wouldn't know what to say. And I'm not saying it has anything to do with wisdom. I'm just saying there are some basic things to life, communication, other things that you really can learn from people who are older.
Yeah.
There are, you know what I mean?
And the most frustrating thing that you ever hear when you're young is one day you'll understand. And it makes you so mad.
Yeah.
But I've literally thought a lot lately. I'm like, man, if I could go back.
Yeah.
Man, if I could go back. There are some things. Now, wisdom doesn't necessarily come with age.
No.
You can get old and be a fool.
Yes. I agree. I totally agree. I think you can be young and be wise.
And you can be young and be wise.
I do.
But there are layers of texturing and maturity and deepening of understanding that only come with age as you continue to grow in wisdom. Because I feel like there are certain seasons of it's almost like in a weird way, it's almost like a movie.
Yeah.
When it comes to like a theme,
Mm-hmm.
you could tell somebody, hey, love is important. It's not going to mean anything.
Right.
But if you take them through a movie where they're taken through the ups and downs of a story that is about the importance of love, they're going to feel it in a way at the end of the movie that will stick with them.
Yeah.
I think in a way life is like that. There are things somebody can tell you that until you go through seasons, until you go through life, until you walk through the ups and downs, until you feel the pain of the absence of that thing, it's like it won't stick.
Yeah. I think one of the most important ways to develop wisdom, we talked about those in week 1, just some spiritual, practical ones, but I do think that one of the most important ways to grow in wisdom, when we talk about age and experience and life, I think it is to have the posture where you are willing to learn from mistakes. Because I think what separates, where you can have a young wise person or an old foolish person, I think the difference, an older person has a lot more life experiences. To me, the difference is somebody who's willing to learn from their mistakes, learn from their experiences, and then kind of reshape what their mindset and the way they do life. The reason why someone can be old and foolish is because they continue to repeat the same mistakes.
Yeah, that's good.
They don't actually learn.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I think you can be young and wise is if you have a humble posture where you are seeking counsel. Because you can either learn from your own mistakes or learn from someone else's.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from someone else's successes. And I think sometimes there's a bit of arrogance and pride in us, especially when we are younger.
Yeah, I heard somebody say, when you say I have to make my own mistakes and have to learn my way, he said, yeah, that's the posture of a fool.
Yeah.
It
is.
But unfortunately, that's a lot of us.
Or to think I know best.
Yeah.
Instead of realizing. So I think one of the things that's missing, sadly, from, and I mentioned this the first week, I think one of the things that's missing from not only a beautiful community like a church, but I think just in general in life, is this cross-generational mentoring.
Yes.
I think we're missing that. I think even in the church, I think it's not. I have had several conversations after I said that, and it just, I think there was some people who are a little bit older that felt validated by it.
Yeah.
I think there are also people that are like right in the middle. They're going, how come we don't have more mentoring? Why don't we have more young moms connecting with older moms trying to say, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do. When we have a community that is already tied together spiritually, why don't we do that more? And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We're thinking about it in regards to men. I know women through Inspired are like, how do we connect? Because you can't force mentoring. You can't force somebody. They have to go, I want this. Yeah. But how can we foster it? How do we create an environment where there are, so I just kind of challenge people on that Sunday, and I'm like, if you're younger, if you're this, see somebody older, someone you admire, someone this, ask them, can we get coffee? Yeah. Go pick their brain. Yeah. No, it's so important. I do not know where I would be if it weren't for mentors along the way. Yeah. And in many ways, I was just fortunate that they were there. And then in other seasons, I learned the importance of it, and I sought it out. Yeah. But it is so important. I love the cross-generational thing. Past generations and other cultures, they heralded the elderly. Yeah. They would sit at their feet, and it was precious and it was valued. And it does seem almost like a discarding today of an older generation based on what the current values are of society. I think that's great. I think the humility is key. Right as you said that, I thought about that psalm where David said, God teaches the humble his ways. The posture to grow in wisdom is the posture of humility. Yeah.
But kind of to back up, when you kicked off week 1 and you gave a definition,
Yeah.
and so I wrote it down. I looked back at my notes. I wrote it down again. The definition you gave is wisdom is the ability to use your knowledge and experience to make good decisions. The old saying, like your life is shaped by your choices.
Yeah.
Your choices are what are shaping your future. And so wisdom,
Yeah.
kind of thinking through your definition, is the fuel to make the kind of choices that shape an optimal future.
Yeah.
A couple other definitions. I'm curious your thoughts. I've heard somebody say before that, wisdom is the skill to live well.
Yep.
This I'm really curious. I heard somebody about a month ago. I listened to a message. Somebody broke down wisdom into 3 components. Wisdom is the ability to know the right thing to do. Number 1. Number 2, the commitment to do it.
Yeah, I love that.
And then number 3, the ability to do it the right way.
Ooh, I like all of that. Because I even mentioned the importance, and I think James does in that first chapter, he talks about if you lack wisdom, you let him ask of God who gives generously, and he does all that, but then he also follows up later with the person who hears the word of God but doesn't do it. It's like a man who looks at his face in a mirror and then walks away and forgets. And basically it's pointless. It's not gonna help.
Yeah.
And so I think gaining knowledge is one small part of it, but it's knowing how to apply that, and then it's doing it. And I think that's the hardest thing. I think the hardest thing is making the right choice.
Yeah.
Making the right decision. Because how many times do we look back on life and go, oh, that was dumb.
It's
Why did I buy that? Why did I do that? I knew I should have known better, but I followed my urges and I bought that anyways, or I signed up for that thing and now I'm regretting it.
It's so tough because you want to equate wisdom with knowledge. But they really are different. It really is in the doing.
Yes.
And it's in the doing it right. I mean, the great irony of all of this is that we're told Solomon's the wisest man that ever lived. And you gave a challenge. Today was Proverbs 9. Today was 9, and to read a proverb every day. And so I've been doing that. And
it happened to fall during my regular reading. I'm doing the one plan you are, but I don't know where you are. But it felt that literally I started the beginning of Proverbs. I think that
the same day,
Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, that's sir. So
that's
I'm
funny.
I'm actually in like Proverbs 2019 or 21 because
funny.
I'm doing the reading plan.
Yeah.
But I'll read it quicker than 30 days because I'm doing like 3 chapters a day. But it just so happened to follow my reading plan. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
but it's just interesting because, I mean, the great irony is Solomon, who's supposed to be the wisest man that ever lived, that gave us most of the book of Proverbs, literally ended his life in a destructive path.
Yeah.
In fact, even more ironic, half of his warnings have to do with immorality and staying away from, loose people of the opposite sex that could lead you astray. And that's literally how he ended his life.
Yeah.
By not just marrying a bunch of wives, but marrying a bunch of wives whose hearts were after other gods, and took his whole life astray. And it's that whole thing of wisdom is in the doing. It reminds me of something we've talked about it, but somebody said this like 6 months ago, that you're not changed by what you know, you're changed by what you do. That even internally, the sync only happens when you activate what you've heard. But it's tough. Like, one of the things that I was gonna, I thought could be maybe an interesting nuance, like if I'm looking at you as Solomon, is what is the speed of wisdom? And what I mean by that is, I think in one sense, I think of wisdom as a slowing down.
Yeah.
Right. You're in the heat of temptation. You got to take a beat and get perspective. Right. You got to slow down. You're in the heat of an argument. What do you got to do? You got to be slow down, be slow to speak. Yep. So part of the speed of wisdom is slowness. Yeah. But then there's another part, like you were talking about earlier, where it's like you grow in wisdom as you don't repeat the same mistakes. I've heard somebody else say that wisdom is pattern recognition. So in some ways, I've heard some people say, no, you can tell your level of wisdom by the speed at which you make decisions, because you've had enough pattern recognition that you don't have to overthink so many things. Yep. And so I think sometimes where I get caught up in is I think sometimes I am too slow to make a decision. Like, just to give an example, I think I am somebody, most people that interact with me would say I feel like I'm a very kind, loving person. But I also don't mind to be direct. But because of that, if it's like a relational, like a friendship or a colleague conflict, I at times, because I so want to make sure that I don't have a conversation from the wrong spirit, the wrong heart. I want to make sure you can always take words back. So I always want to make sure I enter conversations with wisdom. I always want to make sure I enter conversations having reflected on my motives, reflect on my heart posture. I think sometimes I can so overthink it that I put off a conversation till too long.
Sure.
And so I don't know. I'm curious about like how do you look at the speed of like, because then you have other leaders that will talk about, well, if you put something off too long, then it's detrimental if you ever go back and you have a conversation. Or if you put off a decision too long.
Right.
Like I know a couple right now that they're asking about wisdom for a decision on a house, and really come to talk to them. They've circled the mountain on this for years and years and years to the point where now they're stuck. So
I mean, that's interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it made me think. I'm like, what is the speed of wisdom? When is it good to move fast? When is it good to move slow?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think it's obviously situational. I think if you were going to err on one side, I would probably err on the side of going too slow. Between the two, just think in general in life. As you made reference to, like even in conversations, relationships, I think it definitely is harder to reel something back that you wish you hadn't said or done than it is to take a little bit more time to do it. I think the problem is right. So if we look at this on a spectrum of speed, they're slow, but sometimes I think we can also move so slow that it literally looks like we're not moving at all. Yeah, and I think that's the problem when we get to such the speed, or we are putting something off, not because we're still processing it, but we're afraid of it.
Yeah, that's
me is
it.
I think if you peel back, you go, it's not that I don't really know. It's I'm afraid to do what I think is the right thing to do.
Or I don't want to do it.
Yeah, or I don't want to make the decision to do it. I think that's more inactivity than it is being slow. Like I'll give you.
That's where the motive matters,
right?
Because I do think that's me. I think sometimes I've had those moments where I'm like, oh, I'm not confused about it. I just want to do it.
Here's what I would say. I would say most of the mistakes that I have made in life and or in leadership have probably come more on the side of doing something before thinking. Saying something before thinking about it. Not giving enough time. I'll give you an example of where I think wisdom is more on the slow side. Like my dad always had this rule that was just a great rule to live by. I've kind of adopted it somewhat, not always, but similarly. You know, he's like, he just said again, this is for financial stuff. He said a dollar amount. He was like, if something's over, I can't remember if it's $100 or something like that. You know, whatever. It could be different stages, but I think it was like $100. Something's over $100, then I am like a purchase or something to buy. He will always wait in about 3 days before he'll buy it. He won't allow himself to buy it for 3 days. A couple things he does, again, depending on what it is and what scale, is he wants to pray and like, God, is this a wise thing to do or buy? Even if it's something, small. But part of the other reason for that is that we have so many different compulsive urges in life that we sometimes, we just buy. We make a lot of foolish financial mistakes because I'm in the moment. I want to buy this. It feels good. I want to do it. So by forcing yourself to slow down and wait, what he's doing is waiting to go, do I still want this? He's really trying to find out, do I still want this 3 days later? Because if the urge of that thing, you're around this with everybody else was buying one, you want one, I'm not going to buy one and wait. 3 days later and nobody's talking about this. Do you still want that? And so I think if you're going to ask me a speed of wisdom, I'm going to say it's slower than probably we think.
Hey, I wonder if you could apply the rule of 3 to a lot of things. Hey, if you're struggling with your eating habits, wait. The moment you have a craving, wait 3 minutes before you decide what you're going to order. Order something healthier.
I like that.
Hey, if you're in the heat of an argument, wait at least 3 hours
before you
go back and approach that.
Yeah, I do. I think that could be a great rule to build into your life. Just because, I think of some of the things that I've said to people that were in the heat of the moment. And you know how you feel that thing rise up inside of you where you're just like, there's something here, it's going to erupt in you, and scripture talks a whole lot about being slow to speak because man's anger does not bring about the righteousness of God.
Yep. I've been thinking about that verse. It doesn't.
It doesn't. So it's like, whoa, I don't want, how much in our relationships, how much in marriage, how much in this is what we say is so reactionary. And I think wisdom. I think there's wisdom in so many different categories. I think one of the ones that we're slowest to learn for some reason is wisdom in relationships. Mm-hmm. We can learn wisdom with our finances, learn wisdom and, maybe how to operate in your time and your schedule and maybe, but for some reason, wisdom in relationships is really hard to come by.
Well, not just that, but I think I told you a couple weeks ago, as I've been kind of thinking about this topic of wisdom, I actually think relationships are the primary canvas against which wisdom is painted on. I think you can know your spirit of wisdom by the health of your relationships.
Love that.
Which
it's
can be
challenge.
It is like, and there are things you can't help. If you're there are extreme circumstances. You cannot help who your boss is. Well, you can help where you work, but. Or maybe you feel trapped in a marriage, whatever. But in general, you can tell the depth of your wisdom by the health of your relationships. It is, in my mind, the primary canvas. In fact, is it in James where it talks about the wisdom from above?
Yep.
And literally everything that comes after that?
I think it's in James 4 or 5.
It's peaceable,
yep.
gentle.
It says this is the life, wisdom.
And so every description it gives of what wisdom from above looks like plays on the canvas of human relationships.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's so true. I think one of the things that I think we struggled to do when it comes to, or let me just say it this way. I think one of the things that we can try to do if we want to lean toward wisdom in relationships, but I'll expand this to like any area of life. If you want to lean toward wisdom, I think one of the hardest things to do for any of us is to look at something objectively.
Yes.
I think part of the reason why Scripture talks so much about the importance and the power of seeking counsel, the one who listens to advice. I talked about that passage on there. A fool thinks they're right, but a wise person listens to the advice of counsel and others. I think one of the reasons why counsel and outside perspective and inviting someone, which again, I think we're maybe not so great as humans, especially not in the West, at doing it, because you almost feel like you're a failure. If you almost feel like it's embarrassing, to ask somebody. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of people, whenever we do a series or we talk about finances, I think there's a lot of people who are struggling financially, but they don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to say, I could use some help.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a mark of achievement for you to do it on your own. But I feel like this is why we're missing something from an older generation or for people, or just anybody who's got that area figured out in their life. And I think that's the challenge, is we see everything through a subjective lens. We don't recognize that what's behind a lot of our decisions are desires, impulses, urges, motives that we're not even aware of, things like that. And so I think one of the things that's always been, like, I try to do in my life, not the greatest at it, but I want to try to remove, this is the other part too, I think, if you are more of an emotional person versus a pragmatic person, I think you have to be more, there's two sides of this. You have to be more cognizant of letting your emotions dictate your decisions. So you should, I think all of us need to be self-aware enough to understand that if I'm a highly emotional person, I'm probably going to be more impulsive. I probably am going to do things, say things that I can't take back that I wish.
And I think, so not to interrupt, but I think there's something really important what you said there that I think, because some people are like, okay, how do I do that? I actually think a starting place is being honest with yourself about the emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. What am I feeling right now?
What am I feeling? And just letting yourself feel it. I heard someone say, I thought this was really interesting, because you always talk about, you should never have a conversation if you're still frustrated. Yeah. But I think it was in one of the arena sessions, he mentioned, he said, sometimes like you need to have a conversation and you've waited, but you're still frustrated. Yeah. And he says, and when that happens, you just need to be honest with yourself and even the other person. Yeah. And you can just tell them, say, hey.
I'm really frustrated.
Be like, hey, cards on the table. I'm still feeling a little frustrated about this. Yeah. Even as we talk. Yeah. Instead of pretending that you're not. Yeah. Because I think sometimes what you can do unintentionally is be unintentionally manipulative, where you use facts as weapons for your feelings. Yeah.
Well, you give yourself time to build some facts and build your argument, but really it's all based on your feelings.
Like you could, like, I think just a real easy example is, let's say a bunch of people are frustrated with you. But the reality is, I'm frustrated with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could use the facts.
There's all these people that are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that might be a real issue.
Yeah.
But if I'm not careful to separate the two and just be honest, no, like
Yeah.
I'm frustrated.
Right.
I can use those facts and weaponize them against you.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And so I think, again, now I want to show the other side, right? So if you're a more emotional person, you need to recognize that your emotions. I think, if anything, if you're a more emotional person, having a 3-hour, 3-day, 3-something buffer is probably really important for you institute. So there's a level of self-awareness, right?
Yep.
Now, I think if you're more pragmatic, I think you have another challenge, which is you are going to think about things, but you're not going to do it for how it's going to impact people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're going to, those are the people, right? And sometimes I can fall into this vein of like, we all know that's the best decision. And so why wouldn't we all just get on board? Instead of actually realizing, that's where the non-emotional side, someone who's able to kind of like, I objectively look at this. Yeah, but you didn't objectively recognize that it's going to just crush this person. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So there's a lack of awareness on both sides of that.
There is.
And so I think a first step toward really moving toward making wise decisions is become self-aware and realize what you need to do. So if you're a more pragmatic person, you might be able to quickly come to, this seems like the best decision. But then probably what you need to do is you need to process that with everybody that's going to be affected by that decision. Here's what I'm thinking, Mom, Dad, I want to go do that. Here's what I'm thinking, wife, husband. Here's what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? Like the team, employees, leadership team. Here's what I'm you know what I mean? And so you need to take time to process the impact of a decision. And so I think it's just really important from both those sides to kind of really recognize where you land when it comes to making decisions.
Can I add one?
Yeah.
Kind of the definition from earlier from the one person, wisdom is knowing what to do, doing it, and then knowing the way to do it.
Yeah, doing it the right way.
Not only, I love what you said about processing, factoring in the impact of your decisions, but I think the third part of that is factoring in the way you communicate that decision.
Yeah.
It's that whole thing of you can be 100% right and 100% wrong at the same time.
Yeah.
Because even if you do all that processing, if you communicate it wrong, and it hurts instead of helps, then the whole thing's wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a question that I heard from a pastor / preacher years ago that has stuck with me, and I try to bring it back to the forefront of my mind when I have a decision to make. Andy Stanley, he used to say this phrase, and he uses it all the time. So he's used it in many of his messages in a series, and so I've heard it over and over a few times throughout the years, listening to him. But I think that there's a lot to break down in this one statement, and it would go something like this. In light of my past experience, my current situation, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? I'll say it again. You remember that one? That's just such a great. And I've heard him do message, and you can literally break down and understand. Your past experiences, know that they influence your current decisions. This is why people often make decisions that undercut their future, is because they're stuck in their past.
Yes.
I've been hurt. I haven't healed from that. I haven't worked through that. This is why you see a lot of people with addictions and other things that have wounds, father wounds, other things like that they carry into their current decisions that ruin their future.
Or they've not connected the dots between their past and present.
Yes. And so I think there's part of being wise. So if we simplify this down to wise decisions, how do I make wise decisions? I have to recognize my past and how it plays into my current situation and my current decision making. Where have I been impacted by past things, my environment, my family dynamic, family of origin? How does that? Because that does affect. I mean, you grew up in a family environment where everything was spontaneous, everything was spur of the moment. There was no real planning, there was no real budget, there was no real structure, and you can find yourself 28 years old in life and living that same way financially, and it was normal. You don't realize that's not the only normal out there. That was just your normal.
Right.
And that normal, and you could still have had really good parents, and your parents might still be financially a wreck at 53 years old. And so you have to understand, in light of my past experiences, and how about being hurt in a relationship before, and then you don't recognize all of your share, that what happened, and then you bring it in your now dating relationship. So you don't open up, you don't let the person in, you don't do this, and then that relationship fails, and then the next one fails, and the next one fails, and you start to go, what is wrong with everybody else? Okay, what's wrong with me? And you might need to address your past. So I love this thought. Think of it in 3 different ways in light of my past experience. Why? Because I don't want to repeat.
Yep.
Fool repeats the same mistakes. A wise person learns from them. It's okay to have screw-ups. Learn from it, right? So in light of my past experience and my current situation, sometimes there are things that seem like they're a great idea, but then you look at it and you go, but not now. I've used that as advice to give people who are like, I really want this. I really want to buy a new car because mine's this. I really want to do this. And try to tell people, whether it's understanding debt, whether it's understanding decisions, and go, if you can understand that it's not no, it's not now.
Yep.
There are some times when you have to look at something at your age, your place in life. You could be like, look, I want to play golf 3 times a week. Like, that's great. You're married. You have 2 kids under 4. You want to be divorced too? You know what I mean? Like, you want to be broke too? Sometimes there's a level where you go, I would love to play golf all the time. My current situation, that would not be a wise thing to do for my family. You know what I mean? Someday, I hope to be able to play more.
Yeah.
But for now, I might need to table this because this is not benefiting my family or our finances.
No, it's good. I also see another aspect, because I know we're jumping around, but I think this is so good. Like, because there's people probably listening. All of us need wisdom. Yeah. And I know you're speaking to, okay, using wisdom in each season, but kind of the invisible ink I hear what you also just said is vision. Because I just met with somebody that, you know, again, I actually look up to people that want to meet as a sounding board for wisdom. Because I agree with you, people struggle with that for some reason. But I had somebody I just had lunch with or just met with coffee with that wanted just sounding board wisdom or whatever. And they're trying to figure out, what am I going to do in this season? And it came back to me, like, one of the thoughts that I offered, as cliche as it sounds, is decision by vision. What is your vision for the season? What is your vision for who you want to become in the next few years? What is your decision, or what is your vision for who God is calling you to be, to do, all those kind of things? And so I love what you said, is like, it's almost like in each season, what's the priority? Yeah. And that informs the wisdom of your choices.
Yeah. Well, and that was like what you were saying is the third part, which is your past experience, current situation, in light of your future hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And so knowing what you are moving toward. Yeah. What do you want to move toward? Yeah. You need to know that so that you make the decision that moves you toward that. Yeah. No, that's good. So there's a level of awareness of your past, your current timing, and your current situation, and your future hopes and dreams. Yeah. And then asking that question. Yeah. Right? In light of all those things, what is the wise thing to do? Buy the car. I want to buy this car right now. I want to buy this car. Ask the question in light of your past experience. What were your past experience buying cars? You can learn a lot from your own mistakes. Yep. Well, I bought this car when I was 17 years old, and I had this payment, and it honestly made things really tight, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, you may not be 20. You might not be 17. You might be 33 years old. But you remember, what did you do that was wrong on that? Yep. Well, I jumped in. I went out the first place I did. I bought the first car that I saw. I did, paid the full price. So what did I learn from my past experience? What does my current situation tell me? Is this a wise thing? And my future hopes and dreams that I want to move toward, is this a wise decision? And I just think that's just his phrase, and I just still hear his voice and him saying that.
I literally wrote it down in my notes.
Did you write it down? Because I've never forgotten that phrase, and I've thought, man, if
it's from a book. Do you remember the name of the book?
No, Visionary.
It's called The Best Question Ever.
Oh, really?
And the entire book is about that question.
So wait, is this
the best question ever?
But is this not even his book?
No, it's his book.
Okay, it's his book. I didn't know he did a book with it.
Yeah, it's literally, the name of the book is The Best Question Ever. And the entire book slowly unfolds the entire question.
Well, I've heard it through messages, never read the book, but maybe that's a book you'd want to get out and read. It's like one of those ones that you just want to have, almost maybe you want to have taped up, or you want to have, you know what I mean? So before you make decisions, ask that question. And it almost allows you to kind of have an out-of-body experience. What I mean by that is, how do I get out of my current emotional, how do I, kind of stand up here and look at the past. Look, what does your current life look like? What are your future hopes and dreams? In light of all that, how do I make the best decision? Another
out-of-body wisdom exercise that's it's so cutting that it's kind of hurtful at times, is one of my former mentors, pastors. He would say, when you're just like in your mind, like, what should I do? Like, oh my, I just like, or it's just like you're going through trying to make decisions.
Yeah.
It's the chair exercise. Turn around and put yourself in the chair.
Yeah.
And pretend it's your younger brother, your son, your daughter, whatever, and imagine if all of their circumstances was your circumstance. What would you tell them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And somehow it takes you outside of it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then whatever advice you'd give them, do it. And it's like, oh, I've done that a few times, and it's tough.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, wow. It helps clarify.
Yeah.
But no, this is so good, because I also think, one of the things that I think the older you get is attention you have to wrestle with in the people you look up to and in yourself, is that the people you look up to can have incredible wisdom in 9 out of 10 areas of their life and be really unwise in one. And the chances are, even if you're a really wise person, you are really wise in a few areas.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed is even the wisest people I know have wisdom blind spots.
Yeah. I agree.
Again, Solomon. I mean, somebody can be great in relationships and bad in money.
Yeah.
Or great in money and great in leadership, but bad in friendships. Or they can be great. Like, I think we actually all have wisdom blind spots.
Yeah.
Which is why the humility piece is so important. Which is why feedback is so important.
Yeah.
One thing I think I was telling you offline, I was curious. I just think some of this processing can maybe be helpful for people. But on the whole idea of getting counsel, I love what you brought out in week 1, which is, you read the verse. The first step of getting wisdom is to get wisdom.
Yeah.
It's to actually seek it out.
Wisdom. Get wisdom.
Which
no
is,
matter what it costs
yes.
you, get wisdom.
Yeah, because I used to tell people when I was a student pastor, like, people are afraid to ask for advice or confess or try to get wisdom or get coaching. I always tell people, and this is true for me too, there's 2 options. You can choose pride or freedom. You can choose pride or health. And you just have to decide which one matters more.
Yep.
My pride or growth. My pride or my freedom. My pride or my health. And it's just like, it's always, I feel like, it maybe sound like an oversimplification, but I really do think it comes down to that a lot. Which one do I value more?
Yeah.
And so I just think in every area of your life, whether it's finances or relationships or spirituality or whatever it is, what does it look like to get wisdom, to get feedback? But one of the things I think is attention, I told you briefly, is so interesting. So that it's not a big deal, but there's an area of my life right now that last week I was catching up with an old friend, and they were asking me about something, and I told them, and they were so encouraged. They're like, oh my gosh, I feel like you need to be open to that. They're like, and they were just giving me all this wisdom. They were so encouraging about it and all these kind of things. And then yesterday I had a conversation with a friend, somebody else I trust, complete opposite. They were like, oh, warning signs. No. You need to. I mean, it was. I left one conversation and I don't feel like I'm very easily influenced, but when it comes to people I trust,
right,
if it's a serious area of my life, I'm like, oh, like, I'm gonna listen. Like, my ears are open, and it was just so interesting because one person that I really trust and that knows me well, was like, oh, I mean, just so encouraging. The other person was just like, warning, and it's like, what do you do with that? And I think, and maybe here's a better way to phrase the tension. Scripture does say that there's safety in the multitude of counselors, right? Yeah. But there's an unhealthy extreme that I think we also try to warn people about, where it's the people that run to everybody for advice. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you're not looking for wisdom. You're just looking for somebody to tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly.
Or you're putting off a decision or whatever. You need a small group of godly, wise people. And so it's like, how do you make sure you're not running to everybody for advice, but that you do have a multitude of counselors? And then how do you parse through when people you trust
don't agree,
tell you such different things?
Well, it sounds like you need a third person to break the tie. That's what you need. Well, there is the number of 3 in Scripture for a lot of reasons, right? So, that is tough. I mean, I think this is the hard part of, because one of the things I said when I talked about it, I said, hey, when you seek advice, actually listen to them. Yeah. Because I do think what you're alluding to is that sometimes we go, okay, well, I guess I should ask somebody. We'll ask somebody, but they don't tell us the answer we want to hear. Yeah. And so we're like, what do we say? When we leave and we go, what do they know? That's why'd you ask him in the first place then,
Right.
you know? And so I think that's a tough thing to do. I think number one, you ought to first, I applaud the fact that you're asking people, right? I mean, it's better than just making a decision on your own and going, I could have avoided that pitfall if I just asked somebody. I think sometimes the benefit of asking other people, I mean, here's the challenge, right? You're asking people that know you kind of well. You're trying to explain a context. You're filtering the context because it's coming just from you.
Right.
So it's being filtered.
Right.
We filter everything when we talk and communicate.
Yep.
So, it's kind of like where you're giving someone two options, but in the way you gave the two options, you can obviously tell which option you're really leaning toward, right? So you're filtering everything. You're hoping that they will just come back with a little bit of their own experience and wisdom so that you can try to pull something to apply. But I think it also kind of highlights at the end of the day, you have to be the one to make the decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, getting advice is one thing, but being the person to make the decision is another.
Yep.
And I think you don't want to go to people with a posture of, I need you to make the decision for me.
Yes.
I think you need to go with the posture of, I'm looking for some feedback and input. And I think when you get to a situation where you have two people who've given opposite ones, I would probably then think, this is just me, I'd probably think two wasn't enough. When Scripture does say there's safety in the counsel of many.
Yep.
Well, maybe there's a reason for that.
Yep.
Maybe there's a reason because no two people are going to see the same thing the same way.
Yep.
And so maybe what you need to do in that case is I need to talk to two more.
Yep.
If two more people all agreed with one of them, well, now I'm at 3-1.
There you go.
I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
if you really don't know which way to go, I think, too, there's a third candidate in all of this. And it's still hard, right? You got two people that you ask. The third candidate is that confirming spirit of God inside of you.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, and it's hard sometimes to know, but that's where I really want to be prayerful in making a decision, or even if it's not a huge one, but I think that what I don't want to do is I don't want to over spiritualize every decision we make.
Yep.
Because I think I want to apply wisdom to every area of my life, even if it feels like it's not a very spiritual one.
Yep.
I want to make a good financial decision. I want to make a good relationship decision, a good work decision,
Yep.
But I also think God cares about all those things too.
Yep.
And I think you can invite him into it and other people to pray with you. But it is hard when you have people that, they disagree.
And are so certain.
And they're so... Yeah. That's a tough one. Some decisions you have to make on your own, and you have to make a mistake on your own too. And you'll find out, right? I mean, I guess here's the thing.
You know what? I'll just let you break the tie later.
Okay, I'll break the tie later.
Yeah.
Or here's what you find out. If you don't, is you make the decision based on they each gave you input and it was opposite. You'll end up going with the one that you want. And if it makes a mistake, here's what I think of. You know which advisor to trust next time.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me think of David. So we've been reading, maybe you've read this part, because I know we do the same reading plan, maybe at different places. But it makes me think of when David fled the city because Absalom was trying to take over. And he sent one of his trusted advisors back to Absalom to confound him. To confuse, because he had his own young advisor. And so he sent his advisor. And so Absalom's first thing he's asking, what do we do? And his normal current advisor is like, you got to go after him. You got to take everybody you can, go hunt him down and take him out. And then David's advisor that he sends back comes back and gives different advice. Here's what I think we should do, blah, blah, blah. And it was said that his counsel and advice was better than the other. So the other guy literally goes, gets his affairs in order, hangs himself because his advice wasn't taken. So there is sometimes a disparity in advice in situations. And that makes it even harder. It's nice when everybody else sees it.
Right.
And you're like, I just need that.
Yep.
But I think there are some decisions that you have to just you're going to have to make the best decision with what knowledge you have, as long as it doesn't go against Scripture, doesn't go against your current situation, your future hopes and dreams. It's not feeding into your past that you haven't wrestled through. If you're doing that, you make a decision, you make a mistake. I mean,
I think paralysis can be even worse.
I agree.
And I think sometimes it's so funny. I had somebody text me this morning about something. They're like, you are so like forward motion, go, go, go. They said it trips me up when occasionally you're like, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Yeah.
And
like going to the doctor. You know how you'll tell me over and over to pray for you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is the fourth time.
I
It's
went
been 2
last
months, and I'm like, are you going to go to the doctor?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, I just haven't gotten around. Okay, I'm not going to pray for you anymore until you go to the doctor, right? It's
very true.
Sometimes it's, you know.
Well, we all have our things,
we do,
right?
And normally I feel like you'd be somebody that when you're tripped up on something, I probably too would be like, oh, because you usually kind of like, no, I really think this is it.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay. You're wrestling with something. You want to make the best decision. Mm-hmm. If anything, it's wise. Mm-hmm. To wrestle with a decision instead of impulsively making it is a wise thing to do. Even if you end up making the wrong one, at least you know you sought counsel, you wrestled with it, you stressed over it, you weren't sure which one was the right one because we don't have all the information we need in life. Then you made the decision. I feel like that kind of, even if it's a wrong decision, is going to come with far less regret.
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling somebody when we were having coffee, I could tell they were just trapped in their head. I just got done reading Fighting Shadows with John Tyson and Jefferson Bethke. And Jefferson Bethke made a comment I thought was really good about like calling in the will of God, that we need to start looking at the will of God as a circle instead of a dot. That a lot of times we look at the will of God as a dot. Yeah. I better make sure
perfect decisions.
Exact will of God, exactly. He's like, what if God's more like a father who's not trying to dictate your every decision, but he's drawn a circle. And there's parameters of what we know from God's will as far as morality, right and wrong. Yeah. Then there's the circle of your general wiring and gifting and calling, and he trusts you to play within that sandbox.
I think he does. That's the whole idea of the center of the will of God. And they're like, what's the center of the will of God? Which
is a way more liberating way to look at it.
It is.
That God's not playing hide and go seek and waiting to just strike me down if I miss the signs in the clouds. Mm-hmm. He's saying, I've gifted you. I've trusted you. Go do what's in your heart.
I like to think of it more like what the advice that God gave Joshua. He said, wherever you set your foot, I've given it to you. Mm-hmm. He didn't say, here's where you set your foot.
Yep.
He said, wherever. So the idea that he's with me and, you know, you're seeking wise counsel, you're trying not to do something that violates God's word. Mm-hmm. I just think you ought to live with freedom. And with that, we don't have all the knowledge.
Yep.
We're in life. Yep. You don't know 1 year from now. You can take this job and, 6 months later, the company goes. In fact, funny story. I just was talking to a guy last weekend. Not this one because I was gone the weekend before that. It's a good buddy from our church. And he took a job that was in a different town, 3-hour drive there. And he was going to move his family and just do the whole process. It was really tough, but he decided he's going to stay here. It's got they're rooted here. Love the church. That's part of the reason, And so he worked it out with them to go there for 3 days and come back. So he's traveling. But the company he worked for before, he was like, I was seeing signs but I was like, I don't know. So what part of the reason why he took this job or started looking for this job is because he just had this feeling that was like, I don't know if this is, the direction they were making cuts and this and that, So he took this job. And he said after he took this job, like with the next 6 months, he's like, they were restructuring doing this. Things look like, he was like, oh man, I made a big mistake. Oh, they kind of think they've gotten through this because he loved working there in that company. And then he told me, he said just like the week before, he said he just found out that they completely closed their doors, no severance, nothing, laid every employee off, just shut down.
Wow.
And so I told him, I said, this is also one of the reasons why I think trying our best to be in tune with the Spirit of God. Because I do think when we're submitted to God in our life, we're submitted to God with our finances, when we're submitted to God in all areas, and we have, I think sometimes what we think are just feelings might actually be leadings of God's Spirit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, aren't you so glad that you took that job? And I told him, I was trying to encourage him. I said, I think maybe you're more in tune with, maybe God was leading you there because he was, and this is what I'm saying is we don't have all the information. We don't know what's going to happen 6 months or a year from now. So I want to do my best in those decisions to try to like really ascertain, God, can you lead me one way or the other? And I think when he doesn't lead you one way or the other, maybe like the place that you're in, a decision, it's not violating God's will. It's not, a contradiction of your calling, your purpose and all this. I think there's freedom. Doesn't mean it'll always be the best, and maybe you'll wish you'd done this, but you've exhausted, maybe not fully, but you've exhausted a lot of options. You've asked people for wisdom and counsel. I don't think you're going to end up with a lot of regret. If it doesn't work out, you're going to go, I tried.
Yep.
It didn't work out. and I'm not going to listen to you next time, but I will put.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's
good.
It's a tricky thing to navigate, but I just want to say, if anybody's listening, especially, can I just say, if you're younger, man, I think this, when we're younger, we tend to have more pride. The more life beats us up.
Yeah.
The more life beats the pride out of us.
Yeah.
The older we get, we tend to have a little bit less pride because we've learned some things and we realize we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
So if I could just say, just what I would say probably closing to anybody who's younger, that if you're watching this, you're listening now, the best posture you can take in life is that posture of humility, of just find people around you and like, okay, if it's this career you want to go into, find somebody who's in that career. And you just go and say, tell me about this. Tell me about this career. What's the best path for me? You have somebody that's in leadership. You want to one day get in leadership. Go get coffee. Go ask them, what can I do today that would prepare me for that? There's so many things that I look back on me 20 years ago and go, oh man, I would tell myself, do this differently, do this. You know what I mean? And that's life. We're all, but I don't, at the same time, I also don't feel like I have a lot of regrets.
Yeah.
I would do it differently. And I mean, there's a few. Right? There's some relational things that I've done in leadership that I go, gosh, I do regret that.
I've thought about this about you before. You don't have a lot of regrets. See, I do have a lot of regrets.
I don't have a ton. I do have some. I think it's probably because I'm a bit more pragmatic in how I approach things, and maybe that's helped me a little bit. But and I've had people around me, but I mean, I do. I guess I don't have a ton of ministry regrets. Let me say that in regards to church ministry. I look back and go, boy, I would do things a whole lot differently. But they're not like, I have some regrets with it, but they were like, well, I felt like this was the right thing to do. I did it. It didn't work out. I still probably, going back to that situation, go, I still needed, so maybe I hired somebody this and it didn't work out, end up being like, it hurt us, hurt the church, hurt this, blah, blah, I had to deal with it. I might look back on that situation and go, no, I still needed to hire someone. I hired the wrong someone.
Yeah. And you learned.
And I learned.
Yeah.
What am I doing? What am I looking for? What qualities really do matter that I overlooked? What were my blind spots for leadership? Okay. So I don't have tons and tons of regrets. I do have a lot of things that if I could do it over again, I would do it differently. And so I think there's a difference between recognizing like, okay, I messed that up, or I could have done that better, and actually having a serious regret. Yeah. And so I want to try to avoid the regret ones if I can.
Also, just a side note, I think it is, I don't resonate with it, and I think it's stupid when people say that they have no regrets.
Yeah.
Not what you said. What I mean is like when people refuse to take the posture, like no regrets.
Oh no.
And I'm like, no. If I hurt someone, I regret it.
I think most of mine are relational.
I think there's a difference between having regrets and regrets having you.
I think most
you
of mine
can have things you regret without living in regret.
Yes. And I think most of mine would be relational, leadership, or financial. If I were to break them down, it'd probably be most, and maybe some probably parenting. There's some parenting things that I look back on different seasons and go, I did not give the best of myself to my kids because I was focused on this. Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? So there's those, I probably put them in a couple categories. Yeah. But a lot of, relational, like you said, I mean, I've got some leadership regrets. There were some things that I did that hurt people. Yeah. That you can't, even if you patch it, repair it, I've tried, you know what I mean? I've done that. You can't take back what happened. So I just don't think it's possible to live with no regrets. Yeah.
And if you don't regret it, did you ever actually learn from it? And did you ever actually, I think it's a weird posture. Like even on a spirituals place, like the reason you would quote unquote repent of a sin is because it grieved God's heart and was wrong. Which means you regret it doing it.
Absolutely.
I just think it's so weird when people get so
I got no regrets.
Cliche. I'm like, no. That's
Yeah, we all have regrets in life, but I agree. I don't feel like they hold over me. Yeah. But some of that is because I think our faith, and we just recognize that God's forgiveness. And so there's some things where the harder part is not God forgiving you, but you forgiving you. Yes. Because of really bad decisions. Yeah. And sometimes you spend the next 10 years or 20 years having to work your way out of that. You can make a bad financial decision. And pay for it for the next 10 years.
I heard somebody, I think I even probably found a way to put it in some of the things I've been writing, but I heard some form of, I was on an arena session call, and someone was asking, it was part of the Q&A, and they're asking a question. But really, you could hear in their voice just a lot of regret. And kind of the basic advice back was, no regret, just action now.
Yeah. Time to move on. Move forward.
Yeah. And I think the best way you get out of your head and out of regret is let it go and take a next step forward.
Yeah.
I
love it.
But I think it's been a good conversation.
Yeah.
I think, no matter where anybody is, wisdom is something that touches us all and affects us all.
Mm-hmm.
And our lives are the result of our choices and our wisdom.
Yeah.
I love,
Proverbs 4:7. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom,
mm-hmm.
though it cost you everything.
Mm-hmm. And the beginning of wisdom is, and the basis of wisdom
Mm-hmm.
is to fear the Lord.
Yep.
Which,
Fear of the Lord is also the beginning of wisdom.
and why is that? Because the posture of fearing the Lord is the posture of humility.
Yeah.
And that's the pathway. So, good conversation.
Yeah. I love it.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. And hopefully you enjoy this conversation. Share it with somebody you think it might impact or encourage. Join us, if you never joined us, for this series that we're in for Word of the Wise. And tons of resources on our X-Church app. Even if you don't go to our church, download the app. There's a ton on there. Until next week, we will see you then.
Hey guys, it's Russ. Thanks so much for listening. We really believe if we can get around tables instead of behind screens, if we can talk to each other instead of at each other, we can make the world better. To help us do that, here are a few things you can do to help. First, if you haven't yet, leave a review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe on YouTube. This helps more than you know. Also, if you have been impacted by the community out of which this podcast comes, that's X-Church. Maybe you're local or you've been touched by the messages and impact across the country, even the world. I want to encourage you to support this work. A powerful life principle is to invest in the people and places that invest in you. And so I want to invite you to do that right now by going to thex.church/give. You can give a one-time small gift, a sacrificial gift, or even become a recurring partner. Together, let's keep elevating the conversation, thinking higher, loving deeper, and making the world better. Cheers.